Do you feel surrounded by doctors who don't understand your fitness goals or who dismiss your lifting and nutrition approach? Imagine walking into your next doctor appointment and having an intelligent conversation about protein intake, lifting heavy, and body composition goals instead of just being told to eat less and exercise more. Today, we're sitting down with a doctor who lifts weights and wants to transform healthcare by combining medicine with real-world fitness experience. You'll learn how to find doctors who actually get it, what to do when they don't, and most importantly, how to take control of your health while working within the medical system. If you're frustrated with the typical medical advice or simply want to optimize your health beyond what typical healthcare offers, this episode will give you the blueprint to bridge the gap between your fitness goals and your medical care. Welcome to Wits and Weights, the podcast that blends evidence and engineering to help you build smart, efficient systems to achieve your dream physique. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and today I'm excited to have Dr. Spencer Nadolsky on the show to reveal why healthcare desperately needs more doctors who themselves practice a fitness lifestyle. Now, Dr. Spencer isn't your typical physician. He's an obesity and lipid specialist who's competed as a heavyweight wrestler and football player before becoming a doctor. He's working hard to connect traditional medicine with accessible lifestyle changes and is a self-proclaimed meme specialist who calls out the charlatans on social media, whether they're doctors or not. He's also the co-host of the Docs Who Lift podcast. Today, you'll learn why even well-meaning doctors often don't understand fitness and nutrition, how having physicians who lift weights could transform healthcare, and what it really takes to combine evidence-based medicine with practical training and nutrition. Plus, we might discuss some simple, uncontroversial topics like the root cause of obesity and the future of healthcare. Dr. Spencer, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right, man. So I've been following your stuff for a while, and I definitely encourage folks to check you out, both on Instagram and on Threads. Your feed is full of memes about what people say about doctors and what doctors say and things like GLP-1 and all the fun stuff, Diet Coke, you name it.
Yeah.
And you've defended physicians who have good intentions. So we're definitely not here to bash doctors, which you are.
Right.
So let's start with the crazy stuff to set the stage. Like, I'm curious, what's a ridiculous but typical advice that you hear doctors give related to, say, exercise or lifting weights?
Yeah, I mean, the most common thing that I see is when patients are lifting weights themselves and they go and they're kind of proud about it. And the doctor will say, well, you shouldn't do that. That's not good for you. You need to go run instead. And it's like, to be really patient-centric, you should applaud their efforts of whatever they're doing for lifestyle change. And the doctor should know that lifting weights is good for them. Unfortunately, I'd say it's actually probably some of the older doctors that are probably on their way out. Kind of the newer line of thinking is like, hey, probably any physical activity at this point is good. And lifting weights is a very healthful thing to do, obviously, as you know, but it's so anti-patient. And this is kind of what causes some of that distrust in the medical profession is when they kind of wag their finger and say, no, you should be doing this. And especially when it's completely wrong. So one of them is the whole like, no, cardio is better than weights. And like, obviously, I promote a combination of the two. But more importantly, what will the patient actually do? Go with that. If a patient told me, like, I don't want to lift weights at all, it's miserable, I just want to run and be physically active, I'd say, okay, great. Maybe you just haven't done some sort of weightlifting or resistance training that was at all enjoyable. And then we go from there. But sometimes they refuse. And I wouldn't be like, you shouldn't run. You should only lift weights. So when people do that, the opposite. The other thing that I see is, of course, it's a lot related to nutrition. Some doctors have a plant-based bias. Some doctors have a keto kind of bias. And so they'll kind of push patients in one way or the other. I had a more low-carb bias. A lot of my mentors were, looking back, they were low-carb zealots straight up when I was going through med school. I mean, like I was hanging out with some of the famous low-carb doctors that I now kind of make fun of. It's really funny. I was a student at the time just learning. And now I'm like, okay, but then going through and actually taking care of patients, and I'd be like, okay, you got to kind of go low carb and be like, well, no, I actually lost 100 pounds doing this kind of high carb, low fat, plant-based type of diet. I'd be like, all right, am I going to tell this patient that was stupid and wrong? No, I'm not going to tell him that, but you'll see it all the time online.
Yeah.
So patient will do let's say a carnivore diet, they'll feel good about themselves and they'll go into the doctor and tell them about it. And the doctor will wag their finger. Here, this patient, like, I like making fun of keto and carnivore and stuff like that, but I'm not going to tell a patient that they're an idiot for having just probably changed their life around from following it. I'm going to make sure that some of the, blood markers are okay because of it can alter some of those unfavorably, but it can improve a lot of markers in their health very favorably. And it would be really anti-patient to kind of wag your finger at them. So kind of that dietary dogma that some of these doctors bring in it's really too bad. And also, I don't even know if I blame the doctors as much as they blame the system. Basically, right now, what we're seeing, and this is the threads, is kind of hilarious. It's you see it on X as well too, but there's different crowds at each of these places. And if I say something like, "Hey, seed oils probably aren't as bad as what people are saying. Like, you can take them or leave them. I don't really care." And what these people are like, you just big pharma shill. Like you're clearly getting paid by the government to make a meme. I'm like, if the government's paying me to make memes on threads and then we got bigger problems, because like they shouldn't be paying me anything to be posting any of this stuff. But there's a lot of this kind of anti-doctor sentiment where I think a lot of it's just the system. And I think hopefully in the future we see this taken back by the doctors to kind of overhaul the system. It's a long ways away. We can get into that a little bit, but I think a lot of it's a system.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you say, I resonate so hard with. I'm in my 40s, and just in the time I've been seeing physicians and specialists over the last 20 years. And then when I got into lifting like 5 years ago, I've seen that kind of bifurcation between different generations, but not only that, because I've had doctors who are like in their 60s who are super open to learning and being, like you said, patient centric, which that's the root cause of a lot of it. People feel like they're being gaslit and all of that, and whatever it is. And then the idea that adherence, sustainability is probably the most important thing, because if you're just not doing it, going to do it, it doesn't matter what you're doing. But there's a big anti-doctor sentiment. What I like about what you call out is people, fearmonger over silly things and stuff. They forget the fundamentals, whether it's seed oils or diet soda or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Right. And it gets a lot of views and likes. So I know you like take advantage of that, which is fine, because it gets the message out.
It's a lot of hate too. Although I guess the hate can bring engagement, which then brings the people that enjoy it too. The reason I say it is because it's like just a sarcastic, like very like, these people are idiots, but I'm going to say this sarcastically, and so that it makes other people laugh, and then it pisses off the people that want to piss off. But those people get really mad. I'm like, this is just the internet. Like, you guys are like, why are you so mad about this?
I know.
People
and if they met you in person, that I always think, like, if you met another person who posts something online in person, would you respond that way? Because people hide behind this insanity.
It's bizarre behavior. I've not seen anything like it.
How does that make you feel, like, in terms of, do you get stressed out, or do you lose sleep over some of the negativity?
I don't lose sleep. There was a time probably 10 or so years ago where once in a while I could lose sleep over it, because it was kind of newer back then, and it would really make me mad. My skin's gotten a lot thicker, and so like I'm used to it. Some people, it's just like, okay, this person's being very aggressive, I have to block them. Other people, I'll restrict them. Other people, like some people come in and you can tell they're coming in good faith, like, and they'll even say, like, I'm not trying to troll you. I really have this genuine question. Mm-hmm. I will engage in those people. And the other people that come in shooting like really hard, sometimes I'll even, and some people think this is the wrong thing to do, but I'll quote respond. So not respond in the thread. I will quote it and make a very sarcastic, passive aggressive comment, and then that one will go gangbusters viral. Some people, like, you're engaging with the trolls, don't feed them. But I think sometimes fighting back and showing, like, hey, you're not gonna, like, you can't just try to bully me. Like, I'm not even bullying anybody. I'm just making funny comments. And then people try to come in and harass and bully. I'm like, all right, you want to go? Let's go. You have like 30 followers and a private account. My favorite is looking, like, there was one the other day where someone's like, you just shut up. You're such an idiot. You're a shill indoctrinated doctor. And they're saying it's that their profile, they had like 50 followers. They sell vintage t-shirts. So I said, well, this is interesting. You sell vintage t-shirts. I'm a triple board certified physician. And I even said, I don't want to appeal to authority, but I'm going to address these concerns so that it makes a sarcastic comment. And then I'm able to give an educational lesson during it. But some people like, that's feeding the trolls. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, but
I mean, those sometimes make the best topics, honestly. Like, I know if I do an episode and it's coming out maybe before this one called about carbs, like even just with carbs in the title, I think this one's called the number one reason to eat more carbs. And it's about how it's anti-catabolic or whatever. I know I'm going to get tons of trolls from that, just, because people are dead set in their mindset. So I like what you're doing. So getting back to the specific topic then, I mean, how did you get to this point? If you look at your medical training and practice where you're like, either I've had enough with this and I need to start speaking out, or was there a moment in your training where you thought either something's missing or maybe things are moving in the right direction, but people need to hear about it when it comes to what we think of as traditional medical care?
Yeah, it was so after you go through 4 years of medical school, which honestly, I think is probably too long. I think we could actually make it 3 years. That's a whole nother topic for another day. But I felt like my fourth year of like, you could do a lot of electives and I'm ready to go start seeing patients. And because that's the way you really learn, is actually seeing patients, seeing what happens. You learn all this stuff from med school in the classroom, but then actually like practicing it's so much different. You have all this medical knowledge, but you don't actually know how to use it. Anyway, that's totally another topic. But you go through 4 years of medical school for the time being, and then you go to your specialty training. I did family medicine, which is the broadest of all the medicine, and that's 3 years. Some other specialties are 3 years. They go up to like 8 years if you're doing like neurosurgery. And then after that, you can actually do fellowships and then specialize further. And then some people are in training forever. But I remember my first year of residency, which is called your internship year. First of all, I knew right away, I was like, wow, the practice of medicine, this where we bring people in, they take a half day off work to come sit in a waiting room full of not a weight room, but a waiting room full of.
It'd be nice if it was a weight room.
Yeah, it'd be nice. That would be nice. If these people are sick, they're coming in for just their, physical or whatever, but they're around other sick people coughing and wheezing. And then you get like 20 minutes with them. You don't get enough time to actually spend teaching lifestyle to the patient. I knew right away when I started seeing, I was like, this is an archaic, inefficient, just ridiculous way of practicing medicine. And one of my first quarterly evaluation from what we call the attending doctors was my advisor. There were multiple advisors at the residency. The comment was that they thought I was a little bit of a zealot in terms of lifestyle. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, not to brag, but my board scores show that I know the pharmacology pretty well here. And I know all the pathophysiology. I'm just trying to embrace lifestyle as medicine, because that is the right way to do it. Teaching, in fact, when you look at all the major chronic disease guidelines, people are like, they're all big doctors want to do, and all these organizations are in cahoots to sell more drugs. And when you look at it, the number one recommendation is lifestyle. It always is. Doesn't matter if it's osteoarthritis. Doesn't matter if it's sleep apnea. Doesn't matter, obviously, cardiovascular disease, hyperlipidemia, hypertension, obesity, all the different things related to lifestyle. The number one thing is like lifestyle changes. And then it goes into the pharmacotherapy. But I was told that I was a zealot my first quarterly evaluation. I called my brother right afterwards. I was pretty upset. And he was like, well, you just do what you think is right and you'll be fine. By my third year, my last evaluation, they were like, you know what? We were wrong. You're actually a champion for what is the right way to do this. And in fact, a lot of those attendings started getting into lifestyle themselves because I just kept promoting it. It felt good, felt vindicated. But it's a systemic and system issue. So obviously the people that go into medicine, that matters, because if someone goes into medicine because they're interested in surgery only, they might not be into helping people with lifestyle. So they just want to go in and make a lot of money, cut people, drive a Porsche. I don't know.
Mhm.
That's not the majority of people, but there are people like that. But other people, they just, they're smart and they were like, what should I do? I should go be a doctor, I guess. I don't know. That's probably a bad reason, but you should see a lot of people that think that way. And they're like, oh, this is kind of miserable and not that fun. So first of all, it's the people that go into medicine. But from the very beginning of med school, there should be this emphasis of, and now people will say doctors need to learn a lot more about nutrition. I don't think doctors need to be the ones knowing the ins and outs all about nutrition and how to deliver it. I think they need to understand that nutrition and exercise just have major impacts on patients and should know behavior change and understand ways of improving the barriers to what patients go through that stop them, prevent them, or hinder them from doing those behavior changes. So like from the very beginning of med school, it should be like, okay, here's this pathology. It's XYZ disease, and here's how to fix it. And go and just pepper in every bit that they can about lifestyle. It has to start early and it has to be constant. It's just like anything else. And then from there, same thing through residency. It has to be pushed. There has to be ways now, but on another system-wide level, even if the doctor wants to do it, we need to find ways to make it easier to implement. And this is where some of the new admin, maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll make this better, but there's been some talks about reimbursing primary care doctors to actually do this. So right now, you're not really incentivized. Everybody, people are like, all doctors want it. They're incentivized to push drugs. Well, we don't get kickbacks, and people listening to this, I see it all the time. And I actually make a post about it every week on Threads. I go,
you talk about it a lot. Yeah, yep.
and every time the post gets like 500 to 1,000 likes, but there's always comments like, yes, you do. You make money from prescribing drugs. I go, we don't.
Speaking conferences and kickbacks and all this. Yeah,
I personally don't. I actually decline all the money. I've been offered a lot. I don't do it just because it's public. I don't want people to think that I'm being swayed by big pharma. So I don't. But like doctors in general, most doctors aren't speaking for pharmaceutical companies, but there's this thought that doctors are getting kickbacks for prescribing meds and that's why they do it. It's not that. It's that the system incentivizes just doing that and not even talking about lifestyle. Because imagine you have to keep the lights on and the reimbursement keeps going down, down, down. Your reimbursement's higher for doing a procedure. So like having somebody into the cath lab where they stick the thing up their legs, the catheter up their legs, and then inserting a stent, what's called a stent, like a little like spring thing to open up their arteries. They get a lot of money for that. Ideally, we should have prevented that in the first place. But the primary care doctors, they need to see a bunch of patients per day to make ends meet in order to pay for the bills. And that's also big corporations, big hospital systems owning and doing it. So like they force the doctors to do it. Whereas if the doctors just owned it themselves and had better reimbursement, they wouldn't have to see 1 million patients per day. So you're incentivized to just like, hey, I diet and exercise fine, but here's this medicine. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, so let's say they try to do it. They try to do the lifestyle like me and during residency. A lot of patients, unfortunately, don't want to change. They just want the pill. And that's something we have to accept. So what then happens is that doctors who do want to do it get burnt out. But imagine if there was an incentive to continue to push it and it wouldn't burn the doctors out. Again, this is like a large systemic change that would need to happen. It's a big undertaking.
Which then raises the question, what can we, as in the listeners and people who are actively in control of their own healthcare, do about some of this in the meantime? Because you mentioned some really enlightening things for folks, like one being that the system incentivizes this or that. Okay, we get it. Another being that lifestyle itself is shown to be probably the first and best go-to solution for many, many things. And again, I've seen that personally. I have some little conditions here and there. One of them is an esophageal condition, EOE. And I remember the doctor constantly saying, look, there's an elimination diet you can try, and that's probably what you want to do. When I saw that I had to eliminate 80% of what I liked, I said, no, give me the drug, right? Like, I mean, the patient will do that. You're right. But the other thing that comes to mind is, what about, I have a GP, and I'm not going to name him, he's just not in good health. Like, I could tell he's not in good health, like physically or otherwise. What do we do about that in terms of I mean, we're not going to make doctors themselves lift weights and everything, but is there something at the medical school level that can change that? Or what are your thoughts on that when a doctor itself doesn't seem to be healthy?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So like it's a logical fallacy to say this doctor's not healthy, so they're not a good doctor. Now, having said that though, if the doctor's not healthy, some of the studies show that they're not as likely to maybe recommend the lifestyle changes. There's also potentially patients may not respond as well if they were. Now, there's some of that data's mixed. I've seen some kind of contradictory information there. So like, let's say the doctor's struggling with their weight themselves, but they're trying and they try to help their patient, the patient will respond to that. But if, let's say, they just kind of give this lackadaisical and it's clear that they're not putting in a lot of effort, the patient may not respond as favorably to that, and or the doctor won't even give that recommendation. So how to change that? I mean, I promote how obesity is a disease, and we can get into that. It's not a communicable disease where you catch it, although some people think that is possible, but it's not one of those things. It's pathophysiological level. It's just more, it kind of fits that chronic disease model, kind of like type 2 diabetes. So a lot of people struggle with it. Doctors can struggle with it. But I think if we try to, again, starting in medical school, really promote this idea of like healthy living. And some of these medical schools it's kind of this more forward thinking way. They're teaching them how to cook. They're teaching them, which we all should have cooking skills by the time we're in med school. It's after college, but some people just don't know how to. Some people have never touched a weight before. Some people have never done physical activity. So then I do think it's important to, doctors should be at least trying to practice what they preach. I don't think they need to look like bodybuilders or anything like that, but they ideally would be trying their best to have their own lifestyle be good. It doesn't mean that if they don't have that, they don't have the brain or the smarts and the right recommendations. Like, for example, there was just a post the other day that said, if your doctor can't do a couple pull-ups, you need to find another doctor. And someone was like, well, God, I don't care if my oncologist or my whoever can do a couple pull-ups. I want to know that they're that they're a good doctor. So like, that's a little bit extreme. It's more so this like, hopefully that they're trying to live their own healthy lifestyle, and then but we're all kind of human,
Yeah.
Trying to think of some unhealthy things that I do. Sometimes at night I'll snack on some like potato chips because it's like kettle. If they're in the house, if they're not in the house, I don't eat them. Lime tortilla, hint of lime tortilla chips. They cannot be in the house. I will put the kids down. I'll grab a handful with some salsa, and it's so good. It's the salty, crunchy flavor.
Oh, that's kettle corn for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I have some bad. I can't say that I'm perfect by any means, but like, obviously I live a mostly healthful lifestyle. So again, ideally, but behavior change is tough. And I was just looking at how many people follow the current healthcare guidelines. So I posted this on Threads about how like people are like, the government doesn't promote exercise. The government doesn't care if you're healthy. And I'm like, well, the CDC has their recommendations for physical activity. It talks about 150 minutes physical activity. And that's in addition to 2 days a week of strength training. Those are pretty and it's very few people actually get that. I mean, I was looking it up. It was around maybe 25% of people hit those numbers, but I can't even imagine 25% of people actually hit those numbers. Cause like that's 2 days a week of strength. How many people are actually doing that part, let alone the 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic training? I don't, anyway. So, but getting people to do it's tough. It's just tough.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, I know sometimes you make fun of nutrition coaches, which I am, and that's cool because I get where you're coming from, especially when they say things like, doctors don't get any nutrition training and, stuff like that. But a lot of us got into this seeing the behavior change side of it as being the obstacle for a lot of folks, right? And now you got me thinking when it comes to GPs and primary cares potentially being incentivized, I could see that being its own specialty almost of preventive care. Like you get in, you have a GP and or a behavior physician. I don't know, what you'd call it, but like that's an interesting concept because you're right. That would save healthcare a lot of money. That would save insurance companies a lot of money too. I think it's not that they don't get it, right? But it's a huge system with a lot of friction in it. So, I mean, what about the lifting part of it? So you're a doc that lifts weights. You talk about it with your brother on the show all the time. I guess the younger doctors are getting more into it. I know one of my surgeons, I had back surgery. He was definitely catering to athletes, and you can see it in his language and understanding of it. He knew. So one of the biggest things, Spencer, is when you get injured or you have surgery or you're older, there's all these fears about getting hurt and you shouldn't lift anymore or you shouldn't get back to lifting, right? And like, first thing I wanted to do after back surgery was get my deadlift back up and then hit a PR, and some people would be like, you're crazy. You can't do that. So like, what are your thoughts on that? Again, I don't know how we can change the whole system, but just for the listener who lifts.
This is where it has to start med school. And then obviously if they're a surgeon, they went through training. The old guard, and this is going to sound ageist, it's like, I'm not woke or anything like that. But of course I'm like, people online are like, you're a woke, elitist, liberal, Democrat doctor. And I'm like, man, if you knew me, I'm not, I'm not like that. But like, so I'll post and then I'll, get it from the right and I'll get heat from the left. So I'll, if I post something like, you're an ageist, ableist, I'm like, no, I swear to God, I'm just trying to be reasonable here. So like, but there's an old guard and they're going to retire at some point here. And that's going to be a good thing. Like you said, there's some of them have an open mind and some of them are lifting weights and have that forward way of thinking and not stuck in their old ways. But there are a lot that just, they're going to need to retire. And I hate saying this, but some of them are kind of these old dinosaur folks. I'm not saying younger folks are better. It's just that we are able to have gotten more of a bigger array of understanding of how exercise works. Like, so I tore my biceps. I was doing I'm a wrestler, but I was doing jujitsu and someone put me in an arm bar and I curled them up because I didn't know what the heck it was. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, what is it? My arm feels stuck. I curled them up. Felt my biceps just pop. And I was like, what the hell was that? Anyway, had surgery pretty quickly. And my guy I read all these things where they put your arm in this, like, basically like a cast type of thing. And you can only use the range of motion. They adjusted the range of motion every however many weeks by like a centimeter, all these different things. My guy was into lifting. He treated a lot of the SEALs, the Navy SEALs. And he was like, no, man, don't be an idiot with it, but like, you should be aggressive here. I've seen very good things. I went to the physical therapy 2 times and I was already progressed way past what they'd ever seen because, and I wasn't an idiot about it. I wasn't like doing curls after my surgery, but like I was moving it a lot and, started to do very light back rows and things like that, things that like normally they wouldn't have allowed. And because of that, it got strong very quickly. It takes this, people are a little too conservative.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be too aggressive, but I see this all the time where it's like, whatever, like a hernia surgery, other types of surgery, like, no, you should never lift again more than 5 pounds. I'm like, what is that? Doesn't even make any sense. I'm trying
Your body is more than 5 pounds, right?
You got to think. Yeah, you got to think. Yeah. You got to think. Okay, biomechanically, I think anatomically, I think like from a pathophysiology standpoint, like why would that make sense? And honestly, if you just think of it logically, sure. Do we need studies to look at what happens over time? Yeah, sure, we do. But like at the same time, it's like you just have some common sense about that. Why would you not be able to do X, lifting X, Y, Z? Or, if it's some sort of surgery, hey, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be doing like the world's powerlifting competitions anymore. Although, like, even at that point, some people are going to, that's their passion. It's what gives them purpose. You still want to be kind of that patient centric. But again, I think it would start in training, especially for the surgeons I've seen that so many times. And it's like, okay, let's let's back up and think about this from a very logical standpoint. Let's use science to do it, not be idiots about it. And yes, we should, run trials, but they can be expensive. But I agree with you. It's we see that a lot. No more XYZ exercise. It's like, huh? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, even though this is anecdotal, have never heard of dozens of hundreds of people doing this that made it worse. I mean, I'm sure somebody went too aggressive, but it's definitely the norm being the opposite, not doing it enough. And then you get the scar tissue and limited mobility. And then now a year later, you're trying to do something with this, tight tendon or scar tissue, whatever. It's a lot harder to do. It's funny. I have a physical therapist. He's remote. He's in New York. I'm in Connecticut. He's a barbell trainer who's also a physical therapist. It's got like a combined practice. Like, man, if you're a patient and can find folks like that, they kind of can handle both sides. They can walk both sides of it really nicely for you and be aggressive.
That's right. It's cool. Hard to find those types of folks, but when you do, it's like, oh God.
Yeah. Thankfully. Yeah. That's what we need. More guys like that, more guys like you out there that do that. So let's talk about the obesity stuff, because there's definitely a lot of meme material there, but it's also a very serious thing. So I've got some of the quotes from your recent posts, like telling someone with obesity to eat less and move more, similar to telling someone with anxiety just to calm down.
Yeah.
Right. Or calories matter, but appetite drives the bus. Let's just talk about okay, what are the myths about obesity people keep spreading that doesn't help? And what are the top couple things that we need to understand to be empathetic and also to help ourselves and others with obesity, move forward?
Yeah. So whenever I talk about let's say obesity is the disease, obesity is more than willpower and discipline. People will say, no, you're taking out the personal responsibility. It's just an energy balance problem. They just need to eat fewer calories. I'm like, these aren't mutually exclusive. Like, energy balance absolutely is the underlying factor here. The energy balance principles don't tell us what drives the obesity. And that's kind of some straw man type of arguments you see out there, is that just because energy balance doesn't tell us the why things happen doesn't mean it's still not true type of thing. It's energy balance is absolutely true. What goes on with obesity, and a lot of these patients, most of these patients have tried to eat fewer calories in some sort of form of fashion, whether it's counting calories, a ketogenic diet, vegan, plant-based, Mediterranean, paleo, grapefruit diets, unfortunately, lots of the different fads and that type of thing. And what happens is that over time, as they try to do this, their brain kind of fights back in a form of appetite dysregulation. It increases, and they've done this mathematically. There's a really brilliant researcher out there named Kevin Hall who has shown this mathematically and kind of looked at appetite changes and how when people lose weight, their appetite gets ramped up and up and up the more and more you lose weight. Now, I'd say this is more individual, because you do see some people who've lost 100 or 200 pounds and have kept it off for, a few years even sometimes, and they're doing okay. So it's not guaranteed that you're going to have this strong, what I'd call biologically appetite drive.
Which hold on that, Spencer, because that's important for people to know that right there are massive differences between people, and so many people will put their own perspective on others in that department. And I've seen it with clients too, where they have zero appetite at any level of dieting, and others that just start a calorie deficit, and it's like, holy crap, what are we going to do about this? Yeah,
individual differences, and this is where, because you'll see online, in fact, a lot of the people that have the strongest obesity bias are those who used to struggle with obesity themselves and have overcome it with lifestyle only. They'll say, basically, since I did it, everybody can do it. And if you can't do it, it means you're not trying hard enough. You just lack discipline. And I think, if we're putting ourselves in other people's shoes, it's hard to put ourselves in their shoes. I think some of us listening, when you're in elementary school, you could probably do things better or worse than other kids in your class. And it's none of those kids in your class were working hard at whatever they're good at. It's just they were naturally better at something, whether it's math or running or whatever. You can obviously improve with practice. We're not set, genetically determined exactly, but there's genetic differences and upbringing that change our trajectory. So you can imagine genetic and biological differences of why. I mean, we see it. It's about 15 or so percent of people will lose a substantial amount of weight and keep it off over the course of a year with just lifestyle alone. And when I say that, it's around 15 or so percent total body weight loss or more. You can get up to, maybe 20%, but around 15%. So let's say you're 200 pounds, 10% would be 20 pounds, 15% would be 30 pounds. So you get down to 170. So around 15% of people. And so when you look at lifestyle changes, about 15% of people will lose about 15% of their weight. More people will lose around 5% of their weight, which is considered clinically significant. But like when we're looking at these newer drugs like semaglutide, which is the Ozempic Wegovy, or Mounjaro, Zepbound, which is tirzepatide, those drugs get around 15% average body weight loss. If we're talking about semaglutide, 20% for tirzepatide, or even a little bit more. And when you look at how many people achieve those results, you're starting to get into like half or 3/4 of those people are starting to lose an average of 15 or more percent total body weight loss, whereas like only 15%, a very minority of people will lose that amount of weight with lifestyle alone. So what's different about those people that are able to do it? Biologically, they probably don't have that strong, as much of a strong driver. Maybe they found some other ways to cope with that appetite change. But I think it's important for people to know those biological differences. I don't even know what started this conversation now.
No, that's perfect. because ultimately I'm going to tie this back to kind of the behavior change and the medical industry and all that. But I definitely want people to understand and also not feel totally defeated when they find that their experience is different. Especially, I mean, we had Dr. Stephan Guyenet, he talks about, the brain, and you mentioned it as well. A recent study came out too about, again, confirming like epigenetics and the importance of during your lifetime, even when you've dieted many times, that tends to exacerbate that for a variety of reasons, which is amazing to think about that. When you mention like the drugs versus not the drugs, we try to have a nuanced discussion about that, even though people get livid about, like the GLP-1s and all that, of there's a gradient. Like there's people who desperately need it because nothing else has worked and they have a lot of weight to lose for their health. There's people who maybe have been using it and then were able to sort of clean up their lifestyle because now this massive signal is not there. And then they can gradually titrate off of it. And then there's maybe folks that don't need it, and fine, there's a fair criticism there. And the behavior change piece of it, like you talk about diet soda. Let's go there. You talk about how like you had a patient who swapped all her regular soda for diet soda, lost a bunch of fat, and then her type 2 diabetes went into remission, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's a great example of an accessible change that is not too far, right?
Yeah.
Where and then now, was that patient on these drugs? No, right?
No. Yeah.
So, tying that back to the system, the broken system, what do you want listeners to come out of this thinking if they feel like they're not able to lose the fat, not able to lose the weight, their appetite's always super strong, and maybe they aren't willing to go on the drugs, whatever, like just what's step one?
Yeah, you bring up some good points. What's step one? Okay, so I would say normalize or understand that you're not a failure if you're unable to do it with lifestyle. I think that's, people will say they failed lifestyle, and it's a somewhat a stigmatizing term. I've used it in the past because you like for you, for example, for your esophagitis, eosinophilic esophagitis. Let's say you took a certain, you did the elimination diet. What they would write in a note: patient failed conservative therapy, moving on to the steroid or whatever they're using. So with diet and exercise, when trying to lose weight, we'd say patient failed diet and exercise, and now we've changed it because the patient didn't necessarily fail; they didn't respond. So now we say they didn't respond to it. So some people don't respond to it, and people will say, well, they're not working hard enough, they're not whatever. Instead of shifting the blame to the patient, because that's what we do, we're like, they're clearly not doing it. Why don't we shift it towards, hey, maybe it's this biological drive is just too hard to overcome. And that doesn't mean take away all person. People are like, you just want to take away personal responsibility and sell drugs. I'm like, I swear I'm not. I'm just thinking of this differently here. Shift it to more of understanding this biology. So for people out there, don't think of yourself as a failure if you're unable to do a lifestyle. You try your hardest, try your best. There are, people do respond. Don't think you can not try. You try. And then if you aren't responding to it and you do need to lose weight for clinical reasons, you have type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea, those types of things. And it's like, I really need to lose 20% of my weight or 15 or so percent of my weight. There are medicines out there. Now, the big thing right now is that they're not covered very readily. Like 40% of commercial insurance doesn't pay for it, that some of those places are dropping it because it's so expensive. I think we're going to see a lot different in 10 years because the drug costs are going to come lower. More competition is going to drive these drugs lower and lower in terms of costs. So, but I would just know that, just hold out hope that there are therapies out there. Now, you don't have to take these medicines. No one's forcing you to, but that's what I would tell people. Step one, just like, don't think of yourself as a failure. Do know that it is possible for some people to use lifestyle only. Do know that there are other therapies out there if you don't respond to that. That's what I would say.
Hello, my name is Heather, and I am a client of Philip Pape's. Just 6 days after I started this cut, my family and I were in a 7.9 magnitude earthquake here in Adana, Turkey. As I tried to process the stress and trauma, my first instinct was to say, oh, you've been through something hard. This is not a good time. But instead, I reached out to my coach, and he got me under the bar that day. And he helped me keep my macros that day. And not only did I realize that I was doing something fantastic for my body, but I realized that I was doing something fantastic for my mind, and that it was going to help me keep the mental clarity that I was going to need to get my family through what really has been a very difficult 2 months. Here I am on the other side of 8 weeks, got my kids through all the things that we have been through, and I weigh 12 pounds less than I did. And I got a new PR on my bench press. I have a long way to go, and there are still things that I really want to accomplish, but now I know that I can, and I'm really grateful. Thank you, Philip.
And when we talk about lifestyle, what is so I'll tell you my opinion on lifestyle, just from, again, anecdotally, it seems that being more active and strength training tends to be a catalyst for a lot of people if they can get into it. For other things, even nutrition. Like if I have someone say, should I do nutrition? Like if it's a thought experiment, fix my nutrition or fix my exercise and I'm like, just start lifting weights, because you're going to find the nutrition follows it. You're going to want to fuel your body. That's just my opinion. How many folks do you think who are being, say, encouraged to take these drugs are seriously trying or being given the information for lifting and training, building muscle, building strength, that piece of it? Because I think that's missing in a lot of this.
Yeah. So let's see. So there's two parts to this. How many people are being given the information, and then how many people are actually following through if they're given that information? So if I had to guess, I would say the minority of people are being given that information, just based off of I don't even know how this would be studied, that you'd have to go back and look at large EMR databases and then look at the note of what they said. But even still, even if they put it in their note, did they actually tell them how to do it? Hard to study it. But okay, let me give my guess though. If I had to guess, 10% are being told to do it, maybe 20% at the most. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine it's more than that, because you go to. It's we've already talked about the beginning.
Yeah, we talked about it. Doctors just don't all get it.
Pushing. Yeah. So they might say, like, make sure I don't know, make sure you're exercising. That might be the extent of it. Specifically weight training. Ooh, it's got to be small. It's got to be small. Yeah. And then like, are they giving recommendations beyond just, hey, you should go weight train? It's just no way. There's just no way. So it's got to be the minority of people. Now, let's say that they're a big proponent. Let's say they come to me. I have a program. I call it Lift RX, and I'm like pushing it hard. And of course I don't force people to do it. I can't force people to do it. But even still, that percentage of actually people when if I had to guess, and again, I have a study that I'll be starting here soon, looking at body composition, because that's what everybody wants to see. Is like, okay, what's going on here? And we're going to look at strength and body compositions after they start these medicines. And the reason it's going to be cool is because I will be lifting hard. So then what we're going to do, it's not a trial where we do one group gets a placebo, the other one, it's an observational thing. So if in my clinic, I'm pushing it hard regardless, it'll be interesting to see the percentage of people that actually do it, and we'll make sure we follow them along. Again, if we'll see who doesn't do it versus who does it, but everybody will get very aggressive like counseling to do it. So if I had to guess, I would say 30 to 40%, 30% probably actually follow through and start doing it. But I don't know, we'll see. We'll see when I publish it. So like that's small. That's not enough people are doing it.
Yeah. No, I bring it up because it's always on my mind. I wish more people would, and I know all of our mission to do that. Yeah. And specifically with the weight loss drugs, you hear, I'll call it misinformation due to a lack of understanding. Like, oh, you lose weight so quickly and you lose all this muscle mass. When you look at it, it's probably because your rate of loss tends to be faster on these. Yeah. Thus, you're hitting into that severe calorie deficit that causes muscle loss. It just like if you did it naturally at that rate. And that's why I bring it up. But anyway, yeah. So that's why I want people to know about it and know that there's a lot of nuance there. Do you have time for like 3 real quick rapid fire social media questions? Okay. Yeah. I rarely do this, but I think it'd be fun. So the first one is, what's the most controversial fitness influencer that's getting it right? Or at least one that you can think of.
So a controversial influencer that's getting it right?
Besides you.
I don't know if they're, if they're getting it right, I don't know if they're controversial, but I would say I really like Ben Carpenter. He's my buddy, but he's just on point every single video that he does. Like he's just on point. I like him.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, controversy could be like, you're controversial in some ways. You know what I mean? Yeah. You cause a lot of discussion.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. The second one is, name the one food labeled as unhealthy all the time by influencers, but it actually can be quite helpful.
Ooh, yeah. I mean,
there's so many, right?
the one that I'm seeing right now, it's seed oils in general. And I say that there's a lot of nuance there, but like when people say that they give a blanket that seed oils are bad for you, it's like, whoa. What do you mean by that? Well, they cause inflammation. Well, no, the trials show they actually don't. So like, what are you coming up with? So that's probably the one. And I'm not going to sit here and say they're amazing for you and they're going to help you do X, Y, Z, but you always got to compare it to something else. So, seed oils, I think it's, to me, just for anybody listening, I think it's the foods that come packaged with seed oils are the culprit. They're easily overeaten, hyper palatable, ultra processed, increasing excess calories, causing adiposity, excess fat deposition. That's the issue. I'd say the seed oils are a red herring is the term for it. It's like you're focused on this, you're hyper focused on one little thing. It's everything else that comes in. Anyway, that's what I would say.
No, that's good. I could have guessed that. Because one of my friends, his name is Dustin Lambert. He's a nutrition coach that loves to look at the research, and we'll always say, what are you comparing it to? Are you comparing it to like a high saturated fat diet? Maybe we see, or like you said, they're found in processed food. Same thing with red meat and others, where you have to take away the confounders and the correlations going on.
Exactly.
All right, last rapid fire. What's more dangerous, steroid using natty influencers or doctors pushing fad diets?
Oh, that's great. Okay, so the doctors pushing fad diets or natty steroid users, and what are they promoting?
Steroid using natty influencers. Yeah, this is kind of a silly one, to be honest. It's a silly. So I'm thinking of examples because I don't, some of these people, I don't know if they're using steroids and they claim they're natty, but some of them might be giving out good information despite not being natty. Whereas some of these doctors are extremely dangerous. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm going to go, what was better or worse? I'm going to say
more dangerous.
I'm going to say the doctors doing the fad diets. That's what I would say. They're the dangerous ones.
Cool. All right. Last question. This is not a rapid fire. It's just what I ask all guests. Is there a question that you wish I'd asked? And if so, what's your answer?
No, this has been a great discussion. I just, I think if we all step back you know, we want everybody to be healthier. We want people to lift weights. We want people to eat healthier. There are different ways to skin a cat and to get there. I think doctors are overall good and want patients to be healthy. We talked about not enough doctors lift, and I think that they're wrong, but I still think that they have your best interest. So I don't want people coming around, oh, this guy's trash and doctor. I like doctors. Doctors are good in general. There's some bad apples, the fad diet doctors,
sure.
as mentioned. And some of these people, I swear they're just doing it for fame and clout on the internet. It's really, really weird and too bad. But for the most part, most doctors out there they want people to be good. So I wouldn't fault them for not promoting lifting weights. But I would hope that the new crowd, the new wave, the new generation of doctors understands it. I think so. I think we're seeing that, and part of that social media. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm seeing it too. That's good. It's a positive message. And if you're listening and you're, taking control of your own health, maybe you're going to inspire doctors to do that. And I've heard stories of that where the doctors themselves get more educated by patients who are very much into this stuff.
Yep.
From including chiropractors and non-doctors as well. Just like, oh, what are you doing? A lot more yoga? No, I'm actually lifting weights. Ah, interesting.
Yeah, that's cool.
So good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Where do you want folks to find you, Dr. Spencer?
Find me on Instagram and Threads. I hate saying X because, I don't know. I call it Twitter still, but
yeah, sure.
Instagram at Dr. Dr. Nadolsky, DrNadolsky. You can listen to Docs Who Lift podcast. I have a podcast with my brother who's an endocrinologist who's lifts a lot of weights as well. That's
cool.
That's about right.
All right, man. I'll throw those in the show notes. I really appreciate you doing this for me and the listener. It was fun.
Thanks for having me on.